It's a topic for years.
It's always one of the facts.
I think I made him feel better.
Yeah, that was.
You handled that very well.
So we get started. It's 5:30. And we were supposed to conduct this until the official celebration.
No, I'm very good at that.
I'm on that.
My fault.
I'm going to ask you.
Thank you. I know.
So we'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum tonight. And we'll start out with a review of the agenda. And we'll start out with any comments, commissioner comments, followed by the review and approve of the minutes. Then we'll have a report of the chief's recruitment and how that's going from Christy Hammond and Peter Cheminitz. Then we'll go over the municipal justice system review. Christy will stay and give us that again along with the chief. And then our next item, the communications with the city. Jason is not going to be here tonight. What I'd like to do is maybe just spend 5 or 10 minutes to talk about what are some of the things that we want to talk about in the communications with the city and with maybe the city council. Because, you know, in our bylaws and in our charter, it talks about that we're an advisory body to the city council, the city manager, and the police chief. And of course, we always have the chief at our meetings, so our information gets right to him. But we're meeting to, I think I'll talk about this at our retreat about how we best communicate to the other. So we'll talk a little bit about that, so that maybe at the next meeting we can have somebody from the city come. And then our next topic will be an ad hoc committee discussion. Carter gave us a little bit of briefing on that, and then we'll follow with the chief's report and closing comments. So with that, and one other thing real quickly is that Mr. Walker, this will be his last meeting. He's moving across country to be closer to family, and which is very sad and the whole reason why we have the cupcakes tonight. And so we'll hopefully have a little time at the end to visit with thank you for so with that, I will turn it over to public comments.
Okay, we have one person in the queue for public comments, Joe Kendall. Just as a reminder, Joe, we have 3 minutes, and I'll give you a reminder in 20 seconds. I know you know.
Okay, so Joe Kendall, congratulations. This commission has had a full year to repeal Little Bobby's censorship rules. You are now on record as enemies of the First Amendment. Speaking of free speech, we now know that Matt Halls was fired from the Oregon Bach Festival for a joke between Halls and longtime friend Reginald Mobley. Mobley went public indicating a white woman overheard them talking and reported it to the U of O authorities, claiming the joke was sexual slur. Imagine my surprise having had exactly the same experience. A politically correct, identity politics, thought-mannying, grievance-mongering, victim culture, virtue-signaling social justice warrior on the hunt to call out every hateful microaggression and assure these crimes are fully punished, ratted out Halls. A civil war over free speech has begun. Special snowflakes on the left label words and ideas they don't like as hate speech and people they don't like as Nazis. Mobley, supporting his friend, obviously takes him as a white supremacist Nazi who needs to be punished. Mobley happens to be black. Politically correct ideologues are censoring, rewriting history, tearing down monuments, no platforming, violently attacking folks in the street, and organizing campaigns to get people fired or otherwise punished. The violence in Berkeley, Charlottesville, Boston, and elsewhere has arrived in Eugene. Sadly, this group is too clueless to notice. students who speak against the social justice narrative have been brought up at the U of O. But why should this group concern itself with Chief Kern's two top priorities, homelessness and growing political violence? There is evidence the Charlottesville car ramming was a false flag. Unlike 9/11, will this be investigated by people not implicated in this crime? Charlottesville, like Berkeley and elsewhere, had a police stand-down order. And what about Antifa? Do you realize that many of the people behind those masks are homeless street kids? You know, the kind ETV has been harassing? How about those Antifa chants? What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want it? Now. Or pigs in a blanket, frying like bacon. Ben Shapiro is scheduled to speak at Berkeley as you sit here. Violence is likely. Milo is hosting Free Speech Week at Berkeley in 9 days. September 28th, Bicycle Lock Boy, that's Eric Clanton, goes on trial. September 25th, you go before the City Council. Having attended most of your meetings, I know you have accomplished little of value beyond being entertained by EPD. Thank you.
Public comments. Okay. So we move to commissioner comments, and I pick on you, Edward, to start us off.
Just happy to be back. Missed you all. Yeah. I'll keep it brief. I'm very happy to see Jennifer Eric. We worked together on the Neighbors USA conference, and I think
So we'll just go around the table, Jennifer.
I just wanted to say thank you to the people who have been involved in my orientation for this group. It's been extremely helpful. I'm really looking forward to it, and I know I still have a lot to learn, so I would appreciate any further assistance that any of you think I need.
I did a nice ride-along, actually a walk-along, downtown with Sergeant Smith, and my perception is that the police presence downtown was really growing. It was a comparatively pleasant place to look. Just in my perception again, to what it has been before. So I was happy and gratified to see how well it was working.
I just want to apologize for missing one of the months of you. Glad to see everybody's here today.
no comment.
I was very interested in the comments that I heard on the meeting that we had on the 5th for the chief selection process, and learned a lot about how they're going to conduct it, and I get to learn a little bit more tonight, so it's very, very interesting.
I'll leave my civilian
I mentioned to Chris prior that at least my first time was speaking to here. I thought it might be, there's been so much public interest in having an auditor. One of the things that appears to me that the city code and charter allow the police auditor to do is to write reports for us, updating us on the status of things. And one of the things we seem to all agree on is the implementation of 21st century policing principles. And I think we've come a long way in those, and I thought it would be interesting to see if City Council was interested in either doing a contract or having a police auditor, see where we were as sort of a check-in and what we've already said we want to do and what remains to be done. So I don't know if it will happen or not, but I thought it was an opportunity to sort of do a check as we do hire a new police chief and go from there. And hopefully also give folks some, allow folks to perceive that we're not afraid of taking a close look to see what we say we're going to do and how much we have done and what we yet have to do. Thank you.
So we'll move on to the review and approve of the July. Anybody have any corrections? Go ahead.
We're talking about the minutes in the packet. There's Martin Eugene. And I love the fact that I'm apparently in the template for every set of minutes as president, but I don't think I was. If I was and I don't remember all this stuff that happened, I'm in big trouble. That's all I saw. Otherwise, Carter, usual.
I have one more. Is what's the Eugene Police Commission 3 induction treat?
Move to approve the minutes as amended. Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to our chief recruitment. If I could have Christy and Eugene join us and say that would be great.
Thank you for inviting us to come and talk about the process. We're pretty excited about where we've been on our journey over the last few months. And I want to also thank those of you that were able to attend the September 3rd sessions that we had. Your insights were very helpful and helped insight the process. And it was really great for, for City Manager John Reed and our recruiters and the next year. So, for some of you, this might be a little bit of a repeat, so a bit of I apologize. One of the things that the team set out to do is that John Reed approached me to take on a leadership role in putting together teams to lead the recruitment of the police chief. He asked that the recruitment be engaging and transparent and inclusive, and that we really seek to understand and gather input from a wide variety of our community to make sure that everybody has a voice in the process. And so this first phase of work that we've been doing is what we're calling the listening phase. And what I would also say is listening has no start and finish in our process. It goes throughout the process. We want to be open to receiving input throughout the entire time, even after the posting goes live, to help think about decisions that John, or things that John should be considering in making his decision. So we launched, put together the team. We put together two teams. One is sort of a core team that includes representatives like Peter from across the city organization. And as we put together that core team, one of the major objectives was to find a team of people who had extensive experience doing outreach and engagement and could really help us in that realm. In addition, the other team that was put together was the EPD process team. Equally as important as gathering input from the community is also hearing from all of the staff within the police department, understanding what's important to them in their next year. And Peter is leading that team along with Sergeant Harrison and Matt Rodriguez from the Works Department. And he's going to talk a little bit more about the outreach and engagement work that's been happening. The next, as we move through this listening phase and start winding down, initial information that we're getting, then the next thing that will happen is that we'll work with the recruiter, the team will work with the recruiters, put together a posting to move forward with the outreach and process. And the recruiter will do a lot of work on the outreach. I would also say that the recruiter has been very interested in hearing if there's other people, if you guys are aware of people, captains or whatever in the police force, chiefs that you know from other areas that you think that we should be reaching out to. Very appreciative of receiving any of that information that you have. The recruiter was chosen late July or early August, and I want to thank Marty. He represented you all at the table in the interviews that we had with 3 different recruiting agencies. We selected Strategic Government Resources and Holyfield is the CEO of that business. They do a variety of things in addition to recruiting that are very well connected across the community. In addition to working with Ron Holyfield, he added a police chief, a former police chief to the team. The chief that he chose to work on this process was Larry Boyd, who his last tenure as a police chief was 12 years at the city of Irving, Texas. And the reason that he specifically sought out him to partner with on this recruitment was because of his knowledge and understanding of 21st century policing and community-based policing practices. And so together, they're helping us and working through this process and have been on site a couple of different times to start meeting with people. They will be back in October, and so, you know, one of the things I was saying, if there's an interest in connecting with them, they really do want to hear from you. And they know that this group in particular has unique insights that not every community member does, and so I would encourage you to do that. So to move into the recruitment phase, what the recruiter said is essentially I'm going to be open for about 60 days. And we'll continue to move things at a rate that makes the most sense for the recruitment and also doesn't take longer than necessary to continue to move along in the process. At some point, the chief does want to retire. And so, and then after that, we'll move into the interview hiring phase, if you will. And one of the things for those of you who had the chance to hear firsthand was on, there is an extensive process that they do. One of the reasons that they really resonate with me is because vetting potential police chief candidates is of critical importance in understanding as much as we can about the candidates, not only before we go to final interview phase, but before we would onboard somebody. And they do extensive vetting along those lines. There's some work that they do to have them put together a one-year report. So, and those will go to City Manager Reese and whoever else he is involved in evaluating that information as part of the criteria. One of the things that is really insightful is that they have a chance to connect with people about, you know, ask questions about Eugene, things that are going on. But the thing that is really going to be helpful is to get a sense of what that chief might bring, what it is that they're thinking about, what is it that they've learned about our community. The recruiters also sending newspaper articles. Once somebody puts themselves on an interested party list, if you will, the recruiter will start sending articles to those individuals to keep them up to date on current happenings in Eugene. Because especially there'll be some questions or some interest or some topic that we'll want to see how they respond to react to. They'll be paying attention in all the email communications that they have with them, in addition to their writing skills, and just really learning as much as you can. And I will tell you, I've done a lot of recruitments myself for different positions. You learn a lot about people outside of the formal process that tells you about their character, their integrity, and quite frankly, how they treat people. And so they will be looking for that every step of the way. And that will, you know, all of that information will be sent to John Reese. So with that, I think it's time to turn it over to Peter to talk about our outreach and engagement, and we can circle back, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Before you begin, Peter, if you don't know, is there any Christy?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Christy leads the department just like I do. I'd like you to talk about what your responsibilities.
Sure.
We're on the executive team.
Yeah, so we're on the executive team today. Thank you, Chief. So I'm Christy Hammett. I'm the Central Services Director for the City of Eugene, but I'm also recently appointed as the Interim Assistant City Manager. Serving this area as the Interim Public Works Director. And so my responsibilities include really supporting the core services of the organization. So it's finance, information technology, risk, benefits, municipal court is one of the core service areas, and I actually worked in municipal court for 10 plus years as a court administrator before I shifted over to the Central Services Director. And actually, I should also say that I started my career at EPD, so I have a very special place in my heart for public safety and the hard work that our first responders do. So I have a wide variety of different responsibilities. I also work closely and have responsibility for oversight of the city manager's office and staff there, and facilities, just anything that you can think of that supports an organization that kind of falls into the basket of central services. And thank you for giving me that opportunity. If you have any questions about me, I'd be happy to answer them. And you should introduce yourself.
So, my name is Eugene. I work in the Recreation Division here in the city. I've been with the city for about 12 years. I'm at Eugene Bar Community Center. I serve on the city's public engagement team. I do training related to cultural competency. I also have a place in my heart, a special place in my heart for the police department. One of the programs I manage is the Fun for All program.
sites around the city in parks. And we actually work a lot with police. And when Christy approached me with this opportunity, I left that in because one of the things I discovered is that the more you understand people, the more empathy you can have for them. And then any kinds of collaborations that happen in the spaces we inhabit tend to go smoothly. And so just developing a deeper understanding of the police department and the work they do with people who are in town is something that's super important to me. And I have not been disappointed. It's really been some great experience. So related to outreach, as Christy said, there are two parallel processes going on simultaneously. One, an internal process to the department, and then the external process to the community, and as well as other city staff. And that's kind of an arbitrary differentiation there, but I'm not I'll talk a little bit about the internal process. There are three components to that. Christy mentioned the EPD process team. There's 17 folks on that team. It's a large group of people, but the department is large and diverse. We have representation, both sworn and non-sworn, represented and non-represented. The effort was to at least hit at least as many of the work groups within the department that we can, because the work is a little bit different in each of those places. The role of the process team is threefold, two of which are related. They're an information conduit, so work that's happening in the core team that's citywide. We filter that information to the rest of the department through the process team. As well, they help get information from around the department up to the citywide core team. So those are two of the roles here. A second role is to provide quality assurance. One of the things that we want to get out of the outreach that's happening within the department is themes related to qualities of the next chief, priorities of the next chief, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's my responsibility to communicate those themes to the recruiter and core team and John. And I want to make sure that those themes resonate, and so they provide some quality assurance. And then as other projects emerge as we move through the process that would benefit from the insights or participation from EPD staff, that process team will help us source that participation. So for example, we're talking about a video to complete the recruitment package, what it's like to be a police officer in Eugene. And so we'll be turning to the process team saying, okay, this is kind of what we're thinking. What are the stories that you feel resonate or important to tell, and who within the department would be a charismatic teller of that story? So little tasks like that. So that's the EPD process team. In addition to that work, we're also doing small group conversations, and that happens at staff meetings and patrol briefings, primarily at staff meetings and patrol briefings, where we'll talk to whomever's in the room and ask essentially, what are the qualities you're looking for next week? What should that person's priorities be? What are concrete steps that indicate movement towards those priorities? So small group conversations, one-on-one conversations would be the second component. And then the third component is ride-alongs. And so Chris doesn't do ride-alongs, he knows with Sergeant Harrison. He knows all about that stuff. But Matt and I do ride-alongs, patrol ride-alongs, or walk-alongs if we have to be downtown, as well as 911 ride-alongs, both home safety and dispatch, just to help us have a context for the information that we're hearing as we're having these conversations. And that's been really, really interesting. So that's kind of what's happening internally. We're feeling pretty good about, okay, we've got the key information. As Christy said, listening never stops, and there's always opportunities for people to add additional insights and perspectives. But there does seem to be some coalescence around a set of themes that we feel pretty good about. So that's the internal side. External, community engagement, there are about 4 components to that. The first one would be tabling at community events. So between July and August, we did 35 events where we had folks talking about the process, handing out little quarter sheet flyers, kind of laying out a rough timeline and pointing folks to a website where they can get additional information. We additionally have comment cards, and the public comment cards are what if you were writing the job description, it would include ... and then the last one is, I'm happy that you supports that ... you know, I think it's really important for folks within the department to get some relatively direct communication from the community. We're so glad that you're doing this, and that's been great too. So that's tabling and community events. Additionally, we're doing canvassing. So recreation staff are going out door to door, person to person, asking the same questions. Right now, we're concentrating on West Eugene, low income, and folks who we suspect are unhired. We don't ask people their status, but you know, based on our experience, we make guesses. So again, the intention is to give lots of different kinds of people opportunity to contribute their thinking to the next this. And most importantly, we want to make sure that we're connecting with folks that don't attach to already established 60 avenues. So we've got tabling, we've got canvassing, we are putting together community forums. We had our first one on September 5th, and a number of you were at. So the first hour was for boards and commissions, the second hour was open to the community. It was a pretty standard community forum wherein we asked those questions, we asked people to write down responses to those questions, and then we just went around the table and share. We've got a few coming up in the first, second, hopefully first and second. If we have to, we'll go to the third week in October. We're toying with the format of those community forums. You know, as Christy said, one of our intentions as we move through the recruitment is to build trust between the police department and the community. And I'm a huge fan of empathy, and I feel like empathy comes from hearing people's stories. And I went on a ride along 2 Saturdays ago, and I was talking to the officer, and I asked him, how do you become a police officer? He told me the story. I was like, wow, that will contribute some energy to how you prioritize what you're doing. Then I asked him, how do you get into this specific role that you're in? And he told me that story. I was like, oh, wow, well, that also contributes some energy to what it is that you're doing. And, you know, I feel like when we understand people's motivations, they become human. And as we interact as humans, there's a greater ability for us to trust one another and collaborate rather than point fingers. And so we're trying to figure out what might those community forums look like that enable some of that humanizing to happen, and at the same time, you know, allow people to give their perspectives on those questions that we're asking across the spectrum of contacts that we're having. So tabling, canvassing, community forums, and then stakeholder meetings. So leaders of various organizations, both nonprofit or for-profit or other government agencies, what have you. Those folks. Chamber of Commerce. Yeah. So that's kind of the outreach. You know, I think we're 2/3 of the way through this listening phase. I can speak directly to the EPD process and say, you know, I do think some of that stuff's coming together. I don't think any of us have taken a hard look at what's come in on the community side, and that tends to be a little more spread out. But it's great. And, you know, for the last 2 years, I was involved in an outreach process for the Park and Recreation System Plan. And the work that we did there received national attention for the quality of outreach. And, you know, my experience that the outreach we're doing related to the police chief recruitment is at least as robust and probably more robust than that. And I think it's something that we're all pretty proud of. You know, the group of people putting this program, I think, are best. So that's what I got.
just to tag on to that a little bit, one of the things that the recruiter said in the experience I can tell you that the outreach and engagement both inside the department and externally is tenfold in any other community. And he also mentioned that he's never heard the question about how are we reaching out to the homeless and how to get input. And was just really touched by how compassionate our community is in understanding that it's important to give everybody a voice. And so those are two of the statements that he made. Also joining us from our team is Alana. Alana is our Human Resource Director and has been working directly with the recruiters that we spoke about, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have with respect to the work that he's doing. The one thing I would say is that we haven't fully defined what the interview process looks like today. I have a feeling if people think that we're hitting the mark on the outreach and engagement, I would imagine that you'll be feeling that same way about the interview process. At least that's my goal, is that there's a place for everybody to be involved in, especially the board or members from this board to think about how to inform
technology to get on the phone. Yeah, I think one of the highlights is that with the hallmark of the support of the system, method was the multiple executive that I've been involved in. I've never heard the depth of the things that they will be doing to help support candidates for what the city of Eugene, the community of Eugene is very interested to help be successful in a hire. And so it was very impressive to hear all of the touch points, strategies that we're using, like having a video interview of candidates that are just interested in the board through a one-year strategy plan, and all those kinds of things are great and very unique to this firm, and I think they're going to really help us a lot.
One last thing, he said that this would be a great job. There are a lot of qualified people this way.
Like John by downtown in our community. He says it's a really special place. He's been very impressed. They walk around sitting and talking to the families. And he really thinks this is going to be a gem for the right person to come in, and it'll be very attractive for us for different reasons. And we'll let you answer that right away.
We'll put up a queue for anyone to ask questions. Edward, we'll start with you.
I have worked with police departments on the West Coast since 1971. Directly with command staff chiefs in San Francisco from 85 to 92. There has been more time spent in your presentation here today than the public would have heard about the selection of a new police chief in San Francisco. Police commissioners would read that in the newspaper just like everybody else because the mayor made a phone call. That's the process. I did participate in the selection process for captain that was certified. I was deeply impressed by that. And I could also see that there would be candidates from some cities who would look at that and go, this is not me. I wrote my notes, I listed as I love Eugene. The way that I wrote in my notes about it, wow, this is just really, really impressive. I'm kind of a loss for words, how different this is from what I've seen in most other cities. And I understand that the larger cities have political forces that would just push this aside. And it's really, really heartwarming. Eugene's approaching it in a very different way. Because the way it's being approached is a bulwark against that kind of thing. So that's maybe the work you can do it. Good job. Keep it up. For somebody else to say something.
Like I said, we're going to ask Scott if I'm going to put this up on too.
I do like that. There's a lot of work and it's fantastic that we have the ability to do that. Be thoughtful in our approach to hiring a new chief. My question is, when you're building your pool of candidates, how large is that pool for an opportunity like Eugene initially, and then how does it get to what size is the focus group maybe that you're going to be really serious about? What does that look like?
So with the recruited, so this is, and I think you shared this maybe in our open thing, is that you've got the pool of candidates to be in the number size of 40. And then from that, would narrow down to 10 or 15 candidates. But what the recruiter will do is take the candidates and group them by A, B, and C. A are the kind of the top candidates, I think the people that they think would be the best fit. B are like kind of on the bubble, maybe they would be good, but let's sit down and talk about it. And C are the group that probably aren't ready for the responsibilities of leading the Eugene Police Department. And so we would take a look at that, start narrowing. There could be a process in between, kind of a narrowing of that group to maybe 10 or people, and then from there, the next process would be, 3 final candidates or something along those lines. And so there's a very specific narrowing process that they go through. Did you have anything to add? What we'll do, this is numbers by about 40 smaller groups, which is great, narrow it to the number you said, and then they'll have, as I mentioned, recorded online interviews, so they will use this once we get to that semi-finalist stage. They'll also do what they call a review of stage 1. So it's a comprehensive review, which is super important for these positions. Nobody wants surprises. They will have people spend like 12 hours on each candidate as a semi-finalist and do what I call like an article search, running to help inform, the folks that are making this decision on who to move forward, as well as, I'm trying to think of what else. I think those are probably the 2 main things. And then there's a 20-question kind of process that, based on input from the city and what you need that we're interested in, that they will send them and have all of those pilots answer, which will then help ideally inform them on who to move to that last stage. And then at the last stage, they do extensive key insertion. They talk about having up to 300 pages of information per candidate that they source to make sure everything is fully vetted. And here we go. So I feel like we're going to get a pretty good candidate, and then they'll be thoroughly vetted. And quite frankly, we want people that are willing to jump through life for the shot, because quite frankly, it's a good place to be. It's a good product to lead, and a lot of good product here.
So I just want to, again, thank you. I think the work is tremendous, and you're right. I think as you go out and look for candidates, they see what sort of process we're going through just to look at this, and they understand what kind of city they're coming in to work for. And my real question is, when sort of timing, when do you think they'll have these 40 people to look at? I mean, what's their thought? Is this something that once we come up with our basic basis, will they then be able to just pull those in?
Well, I think they're hearing from a lot of people already. And so the informal outreach is already happening to them, because they have, if you look on their website, they start kind of advertising, if you will, that there's some like come in attraction or coming to them, this is posting. And so our posting is already out there, so they're starting to get some hits on that. If it's a 6-day period, it would close sometime around the end of the calendar year. We would really move to vet all of those candidates and make sure we've got everything needed to make a decision about how to narrow that pool and really move forward. And we're hoping that we move to the interview phase January at the latest, early February, because we want to keep the process moving along as quickly as possible.
Great, thank you. And I just again want to thank you, because I know this isn't the only thing that you do during the day. And I know there's a lot of extra work, and really appreciate that. Silver?
Yes. So the posting's out.
The posting is not out. It's an official posting. We're still gathering information. We'll continue to see that distributed from the community side and from the police department side. the recruiters spent quite a bit of time here, and I think starting to get a good sense about what's important to people and their next leader. And so they will be working on that, I would say, over the course of the next 4-ish or so weeks to finalize that. But it's just, it's really just like, hey, Eugene's going to be hiring a police chief that's out there right now. So.
Is there a possibility of us getting some notification of the notification when it goes out so that we can...
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And we, I'm sorry, we enroll this group into notifications. Yeah. Absolutely. On our website, there's a place where you can go and sign on, and there's a specific page just dedicated to the police chief recruitment. We're hoping that that can be a great resource not only for the candidates, but for other people interested in being engaged in the process. And so if you sign up for that, anytime there's an update on that website or some new information, you will get that. And we will also send you any new information that we have as part of the interested parties for the position. This group, I think, will automatically, whether or not you want to be on it, I think you're going to be on it because we feel that you're probably pretty interested, and so we'll make sure that you're on the list.
And what was the main focus that gave you that final decision on going with the Texas-based group?
Honestly, one of the big things was just the input that we received about how it really resonated with people that the emphasis you put on finding a leader, finding somebody that has leadership qualities and skills, that is thoughtful about 21st century policing practices, and really thinking about it from a unique perspective of Eugene. I like the fact that he starts with a clean pool of applicants, so it's not so much more that's full of candidates that that is for other positions they start new every single time. And the other thing that, I'll be honest, is in the responsibility for working on this is the thorough vetting that the firm will do with the candidates. And I just think there's nothing worse for recruitment than to get to a point where you have final candidates and something comes up at the last minute and then it puts the whole process in jeopardy. And so for me, that's something that helps me sleep better at night, knowing that we have somebody on board who's going to vet candidates very thoroughly.
Anybody have questions or comments?
Some of those points when you get to putting out the posting, get in touch with a lot of those police. So 200 or 300 of them that I reach, not, a lot of them are ready to retire now, or have retired. So I'd be happy to.
Absolutely. Very helpful. Thank you.
We're still sharing best practices.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing to what I'm saying? One of the other things, I'm going to run out of my time on my next agenda. One of the other things that was really important too is just the success they have in placing candidates, and the fact that if you have a failed recruitment, they haven't really had failed recruitment, and I think that's part of the process up front. So that was also important to me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time tonight. And then also, Carter has offered that she will send out a link to one of her writings. Thank you. I don't know if you want to stand up and then come back. So Christy and the team are going to talk about the municipal justice system review that's that we're putting together.
Sure, I'll go ahead and get started. Well, you'll see in our jail and policing report here in a little bit that it reveals something that we've known for a long time, and that's the demands on policing services have gone up while our staffing has changed, and you've seen what the effect is, and I'll talk about it a little bit more today. That's not just true of the police department, it's also true of municipal court, and our prosecutors, and the court system, and so over the last 10 years or so, we've been looking for alternatives to traditional criminal justice methods of arresting somebody over and over, putting them in jail, having them go to municipal court, being able to appear, there's a warrant issued for their arrest, we arrest them, and that cycle goes on over and over and over. And it was extremely apparent before we had this pretty extraordinary growth in chronically homeless who are, suffer from severe mental health conditions, drug and alcohol addiction. But now that that population has grown so much here, it's just, any fool in the system can see that we're utterly spinning our wheels for a population that needs an entirely different kind of care than we're able to provide in the traditional methods. So we have sort of on an ad hoc basis looked for solutions to that. The downtown team has done a lot of problem-oriented policing, community-oriented policing. The parks, open space, and recreation have paid for ambassadors in the park system, some of what they've learned about as a need through the Parks and Open Space surveying and work that they've done. We've established this community outreach and response team, which is identifying frequent utilizers of the different systems, municipal court, emergency room, and others, to see if there's alternatives to getting them to the community justice system, the municipal justice system, and that's been pretty effective. I think they lifted over 100 people, and about half of them have been placed in housing they didn't previously have. And then police department, municipal court, our judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys have studied the community justice system, and we've, through a grant, gotten the community court started. And this is a system where someone is arrested in a certain geographical area. We go to a community court where they sit down at a table like this one with the judge, prosecutor, defense attorney, and they come up with sort of solutions to their housing problem and their employment needs, their mental health needs, their addiction needs, their medical needs, and in the room next door are all the services that they would want to access. It's a way of recognizing that asking somebody with that severe condition to show up for an appointment 2 weeks from now in an office, across town, isn't going to happen. This is a way to give somebody a chance to routine visits with the court to change their lifestyle so that they get into something healthier and they can be more well. So we're sort of recognized all that and put some things in place during, the most severe economic downturn in our lifetimes, our parents' lifetimes. And now we're in a place where several things are kind of happening at once. One, there is this growing recognition in neighborhoods, and I think among city councilors, that we need more community justice somehow. Some neighborhoods particularly are feeling less safe, and there's got to be a better way, and we've got to somehow create more capacity in order to create better safety. That's one thing. The other is, I think there is greater, probably the highest level of trust that I've ever seen between the community and its police department. And so there's confidence now in the way that we're doing business. Municipal court is a little less understood, but those that are watching it are impressed by the community court system. And so there is a greater desire in the community to expand the capacity of our community justice system. And I think our city council would like to know, if we were to put another dollar toward it, what would be the ideal way to spend that dollar. So that's not a small piece of work. And so Christy and Glenn Klein, the city attorney, and I are a small team who are not the brains behind the outfit. We have some staff people that know what they're doing. They include, our downtown team sergeant, Carter, Powell from Central Services, and some other folks. We've had the municipal court judge, Wayne Allen, and we've identified what the priorities would be for expanding the system, what are the philosophical objectives of it, and then we've asked ourselves how it would grow. We're able to get only so far with that before we realize we'd better hire a consultant who has experience in this kind of work, and who can help us visualize what that would be and what the components would be and what they would cost, so that the council has either a menu or or a variety of things that they could try to grow. The analogy that we've sort of arrived at for this is that right now we have some pretty significant gaps in our capacity to do work. You know, one staffing study for the police department, we have 190 authorized sworn positions. One staffing study suggested that we need about 300 sworn positions. This is in 2007 when our calls for service were 60% lower than they are today. Another 100 officers just to respond appropriately to the calls for service that we were receiving at that time. Another study indicated that we need about somewhere between 6 and 12 more call takers and dispatchers just to do the work that we have today and to retain the people we have. More forensic evidence unit specialists. What we don't know is exactly what the similar increases should be in municipal court for court time, for jail beds, for prosecutors, defense attorneys, and how the community court system would grow in order to provide, you know, wholesome correction and transitional opportunities for the people that we're working most with there. So Christy and her team sort of did a scan of what kind of consultants are out there that can do this sort of work, and found this 24th Century Policing Solutions group. When you go to their website, you see that they're all people that were on the 21st Century Policing panel and appointed by President Obama. So they're experts in what the 6 pillars are because they helped to develop them, traveled around the country and did all the listening. And they've seen how communities have effectively addressed exactly the issues that we have here in Eugene. So they visited. The second benefit that they bring is city manager wants a police chief that's already engaged in improvements toward 21st century policing pillars and is familiar with them. So when they visited here last month, they gave presentations to the teams that are helping with the police chief search, also our command team and the executive team. So we all have a little better understanding of what we're talking about. And then we also told them about what the greatest needs are here, and they'll give some of the data that I share with you each month in the DLC report. So what we'd like to do is have preliminarily something in front of the council before the end of this calendar year, so the council has something to consider and they can start making decisions as they think about the other work they want to do every year, 18 months or so. That's kind of where we are. Anything you'd add to that?
No, I think that, you know, so that's kind of that phase one. I think about it in 2 phases. It was a great summary, by the way. So we're thinking about this in a 2-phase approach. So some of this work is the more urgent work in responding to council's requests and the budget committee's interest in understanding where the gaps are in the system. And so the next phase of work is what we're wanted to provide more of an opportunity for the incoming police chief to be able to work on some of that assessment, that the longer term initiatives and where we need to go. And so we're kind of purposefully breaking it into 2 phases to allow for that. So deal with what we know today, make some changes, but then look to the future. And one of the things that we're looking at trying to do is to bring the consultants back in October to potentially do some outreach here. If time permits, it would be great for them to get a chance to meet with this group and other boards and commissions, specifically the Human Rights Commission and the Disability Review Board. But we're working through those details. Not sure. The consultants are pretty busy because they work with agencies all across the country, and so we're really honored to have them to be able to work with. And I'll also share with you guys is that they're honored to come and work here because they believe that the police chief, Chief Curran, has set up a really good foundation for building upon, and feels like we are more advanced along these lines than most communities are. Usually they get called in where there's some big problems that they're trying to solve. So they're really anxious to get in and work that says they're really busy. And so we're working on a contract with them to try to figure out how all of these things come together. And one of the other things that they've offered us is because they know that our recruitment process going on at the same time, and they've offered to help or make suggestions or do whatever they can to help us out because they know a lot of people across the country who are doing really good work.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Did I understand you to say that the hope is we're right here in October sometime?
Oh, yeah, that's we're working.
Reasonable hope.
Reasonable hope, but it's just so hard with 13 with people and getting them scheduled. But the intent is that eventually we'll have them back here and getting a chance to give you guys a presentation, give me a chance to you ask for you to ask them firsthand what questions are. And they don't mean to just jump in and shoot if there's anything else. But that's the intent, and also let them have a chance to work with council and give a presentation. Our idea is let's get everybody grounded in understanding the basic pillars, you know, and move in the same direction so we know what we're trying to accomplish together.
What's the name of the company again?
21st Century Police.
Maybe it's not the same.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because it's no longer federal. Yeah.
Resolution.
It's no longer a federal program. Yeah, they're smart people. Yeah, they're very smart.
So we were to hire us.
Yes. So Christy, I know occasionally with consultants it can be difficult, but is there an opportunity for us to work with the city as they develop sort of this that they'll ultimately go back to the consultants? Because I can understand when you have the consultants studying here, it's a little more valuable than some of the pre-planning that you're able to do to get to what we want this report to look like. Is there an opportunity where we could help out with that or do something?
To provide
some input from.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't thought about that. I mean, it's not that I haven't thought about that in terms of giving you a chance to have your eyes on the report. I'm sure that she's given thoughts about that as well. Yes, and Carter's working with me on it, and we just need to think through how to coordinate all of that. And then she's mentioned the end of the calendar year, and it's crazy that it's it'd be right after the first of the year. So just trying to work with all the timelines that we're trying to time constraints. So yeah, our intent is to keep you very informed. And she said, you see all Carter's very well. So.
Yeah, thanks. I just feel like I wanted to say that the effort you're making is got to be some kind of an answer to what's going on here. I mean, in all the years I've worked back in the East Coast, you know, they've been over 100 years more to work with criminals and getting more police and dealing with crime. So they tend to focus a lot more and have a lot more per capita police officers. And I dare say a lot more violent crime back east than this year. So there's something about, you know, how well they've done with the few numbers that they have. But in that regard, you know, I volunteered with the police department, and I've been doing that since 2008. And while I'm trying to stay out of the business in a way, in some ways I'm involved with the commission, so I'm involved in it. But I see things and I know things that show me that the people that, the police officers and the detectives and people that work are so overworked by the amount, just the investigative section alone, the amount of crime that these guys, the caseload that they're handling is unbelievable. And they do as good as they can do, but they definitely need more people. And I know nobody wants to put money into hiring more police officers, but that is one point. There's 3 problems to this program, and I like the fact that you can't arrest everybody and expect that to take care of your problem. They're just going to get out and going to do what they can. And you can't expect police officers to do mental health counselors. They are trained to deal with crisis thanks to the chief program, but they cannot be addressing the mental health issues that they see people have on the street. So you need a good some good mental health programs to help that need the help and perhaps get them on track again and need to not be involved, because the police are behavior oriented. So if there's bad behavior, they have to take action. You have another program that helps them. And then the third thing of that is helping people be employed and feel useful and gainful in their life will make them more receptive to, getting out, doing their work, and then enjoying their life in a normal way. So I'm glad to see. I was afraid when you first started this municipal court because I could see what was going to happen. It was only going to get a few people. It's just not big enough to handle the load that you've got in Eugene. And I was afraid that it would end up being characterized as a failure because it didn't do anything. But what I'm seeing is it's helping those that are getting into it. There just isn't enough of that type of service around. So it's very hard from a council standpoint to try to find money to do all these programs. But that's what you need. You need a panorama of programs in order to address this problem. And I hope I'll be watching to see from far out. I'm hoping and wishing the best for you guys. Thank you.
I guess I just have a specific concern. I think they rightfully reduced several drug-related felonies to misdemeanors. The problem I have with being a prosecutor and that the most misdemeanor probations are probation, so they don't actually supervise them. I don't know if municipal court will be taking those drug-related offenses now. Certainly, eventually they could, or they could be tried in the state courts. So I'm not sure how that's going to work. And even if they are tried in state courts, if they didn't put on a bench probation, sort of another precedent, So I don't know if they're going to keep that path to the state court, drug court system, or whether they're going to say, okay, you're on bench probation now, which cities are hard to live around because of the economy. So I don't know. We might want to ask the question about how that's going to go, because I think overall it's a good thing for some
Thank you so much, Christine, for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. So our next agenda item was communication of the city. So we're not really going to talk about that tonight. I thought it would take maybe 5 minutes or so if any of the commissioners talk about, sort of what we're thinking or what you're thinking about, what communication link that we want to have with the city and maybe even, as the council. Because I think that's the one thing that we talked about, that we really don't have a direct path to the city manager or even somewhat to the city council, and we have 2 city councilors that sit here. And so just want to talk a little bit about that, so that will help as we try to gather somebody to come and visit with us and talk about it more at the next meeting. So if we can do that and just sort of go around and start a queue and anybody wants to start off with their thoughts. Edward?
I'm not going to start every one of these, just so you understand. It was a little bit of an eye-opener to me to read through our paperwork again. I think I looked at that when I first became a commissioner, and probably not since, but anyways. And I realized that we have not, in my thought, put enough effort into some of the things that are our mission. In particular, I would point to how this commission has or hasn't increased communication between the police and the community. Yeah, I'd start with that one. I know that we've had at least one process and subcommittee that should engage in public input events and so on and so forth, but I think we could be doing more. And I also recognize that we're all busy people. So I just want to put out there that if there's one thing I think we did not put as much effort into as we could, it would be letter A.
Yeah, so I've seen, in the years I've been on here, we've held public hearings, and we've had, input from people, and what I see us doing is providing a sounding board for the community, more of a forum, a place where they can come and bring their concerns. And we've seen over the years many times people come here, everything from a crosswalk on 30th to, bicycle riders that are being, whatever their concern is, to be here before us. And, the longer we are in existence as a commission, the more people understand that's who they can come to if they want, if they have some concern with the place in the community. So I think, unless it's a major, like the taser issue and the homeless issues that we held forums on, I think people have an avenue in the town where they can come talk to. So I think that part of it is being handled. The fact that everybody doesn't come is probably a good thing. We wouldn't be able to pack them in, but I know there are people who write and say things that, when I was chairman, we get letters from people with their concerns. So it's not just somebody showing up here. I think it's a good system.
I think we could make some improvements there. We just had a presentation about hiring a chief. We talked about the community outreach there. There's a number of websites out there, social media, that talk about property crimes and other things, and people are taking pictures and reporting this and that, and they're kind of controlling the narrative in those social media outlets. And I don't think that's always fair to the police department, so the hard ones to continue. There's a great story told. There was one told tonight, actually, too. I mean, what we're doing here in the city to improve. And I agree. I think maybe folks will come when they reach a point where it's personal enough. And so we're relying on this we're here, and you guys come to us. But there's some things we can push out information, even support from the police department. Hey, you can report that on the website, and maybe, you'll get a contact back, or at least a log. That's one of the main questions on some of those sites too, is did you report this, or you just put it on social media? And then the follow-ups are, well, it doesn't do any good, so, or something. And they're controlling that narrative, and I just don't, I think when you look at the mission here, and the resources and other aspects, I agree that we can address some of those. We're doing a lot of great work with the policy reviews, but what else in this mission statement are we addressing?
Myself and you, and I think in a lot of ways, Edward, I think you're kind of hit on the spot a little bit with me, and that's sort of our next topic, is to talk about, do we need to do an ad hoc committee where maybe we do go out and do some research. But I also want to take that a step further, is that when we do find that the community is not happy with something, whether it's response time or whether it's, that property crimes aren't being investigated enough, I would look at, well, what's our avenue as a commission if we feel through our conversations and through our research at these meetings that we want to let the city manager know or the city council know that, hey, we're seeing this is a problem. We let the chief know that he controls only one part of that equation. He can only affect things that he can within his department of his budget. But if we want the city managers to know that, well, hey, the commission feels strongly, how do we do that? I don't know if we have a mechanism set up right now for us to really be able to do that. So that's where I want us to take and think about this next step, and also the city council doing. We do that as if, right now just having 2 counselors that can take back some of our, is that powerful enough, or would some other way of us communicating how we feel about this and budgets and other things in general? I mean, it's even this, like we talk about, if we ever felt like drones were after our research. So how do we make that known to the council to maybe take that out as a work session should that be, something that they allow the police department to do. So that's Marty, you would next.
Question to the chief, but on this issue of communications, really between those two city bureaus, I guess. But I love these maps, and I always kind of look and think, okay, what does that correspond to? Does that correspond to my experience? What does that look like on the ground? You know, and for instance, like the corner at Olive and Broadway, I always think this is a design problem. You know, none of these businesses want this much sidewalk. And so I don't know, is there communication about that to the I don't know if it's being taught, but from the police to the planning department, I guess, about it? I know they're doing that big project now.
Yeah, planning, public works, facilities, they all work together.
I won't go find them.
Anybody else, any other thoughts? Or?
Well, I think during the retreat we did talk about perhaps just the very site of our meeting. When you talk about people who can come here, there's probably a lot of people who don't want to come here, or it's too far to come here. It's just where we meet could be problematic. So I don't think we've discussed that since the retreat.
Anything else? Oh, I'm sorry, have you done
As you letting everybody else keep First of all, I agree with you, Scott, about the narrative on a lot of social media. Those of you who use Facebook, go to a safer Eugene in Lane County, where you will not see people allowed to badmouth cops without providing some evidence, because I manage that site. It has between a 2,000 and 10,000 person reach in an average week, and does really well during disasters. Well, because I'm busy posting stuff from my phone from LTD. Edward McClellan says he's been telling me what LTD routes are during the ice storm. I tell thousands of people to reach 15,000 in one day. But there is a lot of, I hate to use the term fake news because it is bandied about so much right now, but there is a lot of stuff in social media and in the regular media coming from the public that is, you know, cops equal bad, there are no good cops, and so on and so on and so forth. And I do think it's important that those of us who have a more measured opinion of the matter speak up. So, by all means, post away on social media. If you don't, I'm not sure you will. The matter of the meeting locale, and I have to tell you, this comes up with neighborhood associations more as well, is, are we holding our meetings at a place where our constituencies can easily reach us? And I agree, we don't want 50 people signed up for public comment every meeting. Unless it's some pressing issue, and there's 50 people who feel really strongly. We've had that here. But I do wonder if it might not be something for us to think about, to hold a couple meetings a year downtown, where people who ride the bus could get to and from it. Harris Hall, library, something of that nature. And you know, in every city I've worked in, city council has held office hours out in the neighborhoods. They send their staff, or an actual council member goes, and it is traditionally known as a great time to get caught up on your work because very few people show up. And yet, you have to make the offer. So that's my thought is that we might want to consider holding some meetings at a more central location.
Well, thank you. Just one thing I want to remind everybody, and you can always bring up and talk about it, getting about the meeting site, but it was originally voted on by the commission to bring it here when they tore down City Hall, because that's where it used to be, City Hall, and then we would reevaluate that when City Hall was rebuilt, when they had the transition. But we can always revisit that. I'd be happy to do that. We're talking about having meetings in a different location once or twice a year. So, okay. Anything else? All right. Move on.
One thing I'd like to add. So my approach to the police department's relationship with the police commission is to acknowledge that it's appointed by elected officials. All the members are appointed by elected officials. It isn't a body that the police department manages. So I do my best to create as much independence as I can for the police commission, and I don't direct, or at least I try not to look as though I'm directing anything. If you ask for my input, I provide it, but otherwise, you develop the policy recommendations you think that we should have, and then we'll work with them after we get them. The ordinance says that the police commission advises the police chief, the city manager, and the city council, and I think that's your job to do that. And it's not my job to communicate your interests to the city manager or the city council, and I have no intent of doing that. The only request that I would make is that if there's an issue you feel the city manager or the city council should have an opportunity to chew on, there's some evaluation as to whether the police department should work with you on it first before you know if it's appropriate. And so to stay with the drone question, if you feel the police department should have drones, well then we should work with the police department first and see what the feasibility of that is. And if there's a political reason or city policy reason, then I totally see how you would go to the city manager or the council from there. But that's an evaluation that can occur with any subject. Yeah.
Also after all.
Yeah.
This is a downfall. I guess. Really sorry, but
I guess they're no larger than this.
Yeah. The point I would make about locations, we don't necessarily have to, as a group, meet places to send representatives to go visit. So I think certainly if you were downtown Westview, we probably should and probably would agree to if we could find the appropriate neighborhood meetings to send us to and put an invitation that may cut down the number of times we all are meeting as a group and make Carter's life.
Anything else? Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. And with that, we're I wanted to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about, in the past we've had a lot of subcommittees. We actually used to have standing subcommittees that used to do a lot of work, and we did a lot more policy work for the department. We used to have a standing policy group that would review the policies first before they went out to the commission. But over time, we felt like we kind of had those same discussions that the committee was having back at the commission meetings, and we were doing them twice, so we sort of got rid of all of that. But I think there's an opportunity for us to think about, as looking at our work plan, is there where we want to commit, we want to create some ad hoc subcommittees from time to time to get 2 or 3 of us out and working on a special project. I mean, kind of just using tonight as an example that, there's 2 things going on that, within the city that maybe we could get involved with, but it'd be easier for it if it was just 2 or 3 of our members going out and doing that. So why don't I talk a little bit about that, and if everybody, if there's possibly a committee that we would like to talk about, maybe structuring even tonight to look at doing that. We've talked a lot about outreach tonight. Is that something that we want to look at? Maybe a committee about how we can do better outreach or going out and doing some more outreach for us. So I'll open it up to any discussion. This is when you guys talk. With
the study going on with criminal justice, and maybe there could be a role for us to be in maybe listening and directing questions that come from our larger group to city staff, so that we're not pummeling them from 7, 8, 12 different places. Maybe that would make consolidate those questions, keep those forward, also report out maybe the status of where the study is and just answer questions to be our source. I think at the end what we would want is a city council that's receiving a recommendation not only from the city staff, the consultant, but also the police commission. I think that the public would want that because that way we're doing our outreach as well. So I think that's all I'd like to visit with everyone.
Just to be clear, if we're asking to be to do extra work, does that mean that we're going to get a pay raise?
Doubling your pay as you budget for a committee?
No, I definitely think that there's some work that needs to be done with the Latino community, but beyond that, I also think that there should be some outreach to those that live in lower socio-economic situations. That's really where my heart's been for a long time, and I think that that's a place that it's amazing to me to see like the difference between the people that are walking downtown to work and those that are living downtown to work. And I've been just dealing with that situation for months and looking at it and just feeling as though there needs to be some coming together, some understanding between those two groups. And I know that there's people that are upset with the street kids and the homelessness in town. But I don't think that they understand the situations that's going on downtown. So I would definitely be up to doing something like that.
So I agree. It sounds like our communication and outreach, we really need a smaller group that can narrow down a plan of attack that we can bring back. And I think that would be easier in a smaller group where we can really look at which issues and which segments of the community we want to focus on in the short term and in the long term. So yeah, I'd be very supportive of that. I think Scott's idea is excellent too. Keep our eyes on that issue in a smaller group and yeah, it can be a little more quick to make questions and decisions.
Yes, I agree. I realize that part of the pitfall of committees in the past, and I was on just one of these, repeating, we're having one conversation in the committee, and we come back here and we have the same conversation over again, is that at least that committee that I was on was trying to deal with policy, which meant a lot of discussion about the policy, which if they want to come back to the big meeting and have a discussion about the policy, with people who weren't in the small meeting. Whereas if the committee is focused on a task and reports back on either it got the task done or it needs this information about the task, you're not rehashing the same material over and over again. Decisions are being made into different places and so on. So that's an important distinction I think committees committees. And I would be happy to help as I can on outreach.
Steve, this is going in the direction I was thinking about, and that's because for a while I served when I was volunteering with the Mano program in the Hispanic community. They lost the program director, CSO, community service officer that left the department, and the program died with it. And I thought the ones I attended were very effective. Uniformed police officers speaking in Spanish to the Spanish community in meetings that were very well attended because they are interesting and explaining what police can and can't do and how the law works in Oregon. And it was reassuring to a lot of people after talking to them afterwards that they felt closer to the community. And in light of what's going on nowadays, with the fear and fear-mongering that's going on, I think it would behoove us as a committee, I say us, you guys, to get out there in the community and outreach to them and to show. I mean, this is a community that's underserved. A lot of attention is made, and rightfully so, to people who are mentally ill in the community and need help, need services. But these are people that work hard. They have families. They may fear for their own safety and well-being in their communities. And we need to assure them the police are there for them. So I think getting out and hearing what they have to say, giving them information and hearing what they have to say bring it back to the police department. And other groups would really help increase the credibility of this commission. So, you know, if I thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, on that, I'm often yelling at the radio when I hear Jeff Sessions talking about coming down on these sanctuary cities. Anybody that's having these discussions about sanctuary cities, it's not the police department's work to do federal work. And so some sort of outreach, as Bob was talking about, towards the Latino community, where they felt safe, where they felt as though we can have a conversation about what it is that the police department does, and that they won't be moving into that direction of, we're going to be looking out, rounding you up, whatever it might entail, that the fears that are coming from that community. I think that would be really beneficial. So.
I could add to what we just said. That's just beneficial, life-saving in some instances. Because there are people in every community in America right now, even more so than what I saw, say, 20 years ago, who are afraid to call 911. They're afraid to call 911 because they think the police would give their information to ICE. You know, like Motel 6 does. I've seen people refuse medical care with a serious head injury because they were illegal. And if there was anything this commission could help the department do in the regard of something as simple as you don't need to be afraid to call 911 Eugene. Here's why. In Spanish. In Tagalog. In anything else we could put it in. I think that would be helpful.
So we have to make motions to do this, but I guess not trying to direct how the motion should go. But I do think outreach seems to be everybody's strong topic here. And we might want to think about when somebody puts together a motion, review that you need to have as your motion here in a minute, because I got notes from Carter. But, you know, we might want to start out with this first committee meeting where we're going out and doing research and finding out what are the populations that we need to outreach, and how can we do outreach to those populations, because then we can come back to the next meeting and go, here's what we think we need to do, here's how to do it, and whether that just means all of us as individuals go out and start attending some of these things or doing this outreach, or we now have another committee thinking on the same lines as Edward says, that, you know, let's have a beginning and end to these committees with certain tasks that they're to do, because I think then it gets to be to where we come back and they're more meaningful and easier for us to work with. So.
And one thing I'd add is that Carter's time needs to be budgeted. It's not unlimited. So whatever decisions you make can only be, you know, they can only go so far without the staff.
That leads me to a question. Would there be any budget available to this committee?
Well, the committee technically doesn't have a budget, and it's only been that one of the cheapest ones, you know, use Carter for different amount of hours versus administrative work. But right now, we've never had a budget for different budget packages.
But you have half of it. Give away that your salary.
I'm on the budget committee, so I can bring that forward. There's different community outreach efforts already out there that maybe we can take back on. So going into that budget cycle, that might be something that we take a look at and ask questions, and I can bring back information to how we're using those outreach dollars, and also maybe getting a calendar of the neighborhood association meetings and so that we can better spread the information. I think a lot of it could be just taking what's out there already and making sure everybody's aware of how to use it.
If we're discussing this, it's mainly because if you're reaching out to the Latino community, you're going to want to have some refreshments. They're going to have some opportunity for childcare and translation. So.
Yeah, and that's what I think would be great is this committee that would be great. Those are sort of things to bring back. Look, we're going to do this to do it right. And as we reach out to this is what we need to think about. So, which may give us an opportunity to look at is there things like really nursery that could help us do that. So I think those would be things that we could really look at to help us do that cure. Food and things like that to help people. So,
Yes.
Okay.
So the bylaws say, and the code says, for all boards and commissions, that committees can't be created without the body collectively figuring out what it is, who's on it, what its purpose is. And what I heard you say, Jennifer, is that we don't necessarily know what the scope is of some of it, so maybe the way to get moving is to create a committee that figures out what the outreach work is. And it's 2 months, or however long it is you think it's going to be to figure it out. But I don't know that tonight you can scope and take an end product for something that you haven't yet talked about. Or maybe you can, but if you haven't, you don't know what the scope's going to be. Just step one is to figure it out, name that, and then you come back together as a body. And anytime a committee meets, it's a public meeting with notice and public comment.
Carter has virtually spoken the motion that I was going to make. I would like to move that the commission create an outreach committee that it be initially tasked with finding where our outreach needs are that are unmet, where our outreach resources are we could apply. That it report back here within 60 days. And within that time, have at least one public meeting. Is there anything else on the card that I missed?
You would have to say how many people.
You create it, and then we need to figure out who's on it.
Right. Do I need to put that in motion somehow?
There's no point in populating a committee that hasn't been approved yet.
I would think so.
So I would do the first motion and then the second.
Second.
2 seconds.
I'm going.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other further discussion about it? So then we'll vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Perfect. So the next one will be then we then have to have some members of our committee. So we could get volunteers that would like to participate in this committee. We would create and then Marty and Silver.
Yep.
Edward.
How many people do you want on the committee? Can't be more than
6.
So it should be 3 or 5. Silver, Edward.
to help us. We think we need more people on it.
5 is better. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
5 works better because what we found with the committees that we had before, if you have a lower number, you can't get a quorum.
Somebody had a joke.
Then you can't conduct business. So 5 is probably the lowest you want to go.
Okay, so then we have Martin, Silver, Edward, and Jennifer. Is that right? Anybody else?
You can find someone in absentia.
I'll be with them. Okay. Do the motion. Perfect. So do we have any other motions?
I have a question.
Let's go for the motion.
I could. So in regard to the study, to allow us, as committee members or commission members, to follow and align the work for the next 2 years with the outcomes of the study. do we need to have a formal nomination to do that from this commission? Or can that, since I don't really see that as a committee per se, as much as it's liaisoning and aligning and creating dialogue.
So the commission has approved the 2-year work plan, and it would just take action from the commission to add to that or redirect it. So you don't need a committee. All you need is staff order to report back the progress, happen to be involved in the team. So you'll get reports on what's happening. And I heard Christy say that she was going to try to figure out how to have engagement with the commission. So to get the collective commission to move on something that you hear from that report, that just takes action from the commission. Was that
There's nothing that prevents any member of the commission from meeting or asking questions.
From whom?
As questions come up from if we're getting information pushed to us, that's going to resolve questions. And not always are the folks that are going to get the data they're pushing, or maybe pushed via email. So how do we see that dialogue?
Christy had said that they haven't figured it out.
So let's say, go step further ahead and get over expense goal. So do we need a motion or something that says that that the chairperson or the vice chair or somebody from this commission can meet with city staff to talk about the progress of that report outside of this meeting here?
No, the city, group that's developing this, we've got a plan. This is a city operation, basically. I don't know how the committee, the commission can interject itself into a city operation. We plan to involve you. We just don't know yet how that's going to happen. So that, the other approach we had here on funding would be the police commission to its own staff. But you're not going to do that.
But if the city staff is willing to meet with us and talk about how we're doing, can we do that without having the commission say that we're allowed to do that?
I don't think legally we can if there's more than 2 months.
The risk, the challenge is that if you are individuals, then you can ask to meet with whoever for whatever. And it's any individual at this table can call anybody, the city staffer can take a phone call from anybody. The commission collectively meets here. So the commission can't meet with Christie not here, because this is where the commission is. It's the only place the commission meets. It's at a public meeting. There's no authority vested to commissioners outside of this table, any more than council has authority outside of their seated table. So if what the commission wants to do is to authorize somebody to be an envoy of sorts to go meet with city staff, then this body could decide that so-and-so is going to be going and meeting. But absent that, it would be individuals who have access to a telephone and can call anybody they want. If that makes sense.
Now, sometimes I'll call commission chairs and ask if they want to have a representative to sit on the interview panel. But that doesn't require a public meeting notice.
But that's not the commission. So that if someone showed up and said, on behalf of the commission, I am commenting such and such, that would be problematic because the commission is here and either authorizes somebody to take action like that or they're speaking on their own. And anybody who's on the commission has a specific perspective that they bring to a table anywhere they're invited that they can't lose. It's just not on behalf of the commission, which that's the sticky wicket. So I don't know if that answered your question. It's probably not like you wanted.
I just want to say what I remember working in the past was if the commission has questions, they can formulate the question and pass a motion that the chair be directed to contact staff and get an answer for them. And if the commission has input, that they see something in the process that they'd like to add some help into the process, they can also make a motion to direct the chair to contact staff to let them know the commission is of one mind on this issue and would like to see this happen. Or, you know, that's usually the way it works best, because having an individual in there to be part of the process doesn't really always get the information back, but a direct question and a direct response gets a response. So you get a sense of some kind of accomplishment of your question being answered or your input getting dealt with, so that you have it. And it carries more weight when the commission votes as a motion to do it and directs the chair to do it. So just my opinion. Thank you.
No, I guess it was just a suggestion that if there was any kind of what I intend to do is to reach out to some of the different organizations that I'm affiliated with or know, and see what maybe they would think could be done through this subcommittee, and bring that back to this committee through Carter, without having the a mass email going out to the different commissioners who's involved, just to be safe.
Keep in mind too, we're going to have same suit built, so we get interested parties out there in the community.
No, it's just we passed. All right, I'm very happy with the communication is, and we're sure that we enacted formal.
They've been very good advertised.
Any more on the committee? We have one. That's good. Great. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the conversation. And move to the chief report.
Can you toggle? Sorry, or I could. Okay, this is some things that I was involved in the past. You guys have seen all this already, so let's see what's the most important. If you have any questions about any of that, I think a lot of us was already in the paper. Some of you were involved in the processes. The captain's process is still underway. We're doing background reviews of each of them that will help inform the final decision. Any questions about any of the other items on here? Okay. These are some newsworthy things that happened, and I won't go through each of them since you've already had a chance to look at those slides. The 21st Century Policing Solutions group that was here was pretty good. It's a great overview, and we're able to see, wow, we're already doing quite a bit of this stuff. The Lone Arm Barricaded Subjects Summit, that's Monday, the 18th. We're ready for that. The reason that we're doing this is this is kind of a very tricky work that police departments are doing now. More and more often, we're all finding ourselves in situations where someone who, more often than not, is dealing with a pretty severe mental health crisis, and they're armed with a knife or a gun, and we want to do everything we can to protect the community, neighbors, passers-by, anybody else, and we want to make sure our officers are safe. And when those two things are addressed, we got to figure out everything we can to not put this person in a situation where an officer's life is threatened and we have to use deadly force. We don't want officers to be seriously injured or killed, and we don't want to injure or kill the person that brought us there. So I think there's a lot of community resources. I think neighboring agencies could help us. Being able to extend the amount of time that the police department is on scene is going to be pretty critical, so that we don't force a situation that can have a very sad outcome for the community. So that's why we're having this summit on Monday. And there's a second one on the 5th of October that'll follow up on that. So that's kind of a big deal for us. It's all part of the evolution, the change that's occurring in law enforcement, where we're trying to find ways to not hurt people and while still protecting the public and our officers.
Who will be at the summit?
Oh boy, it's
big deal.
No, it's supervisors, SWAT team leaders, and then also psychologists, veterans affairs, Whitebird,
Lane County Behavioral Health, the police commissioner.
Police commissioner as well.
Jennifer Vanderhagen from the Office of Equity, Human Rights and Neighborhood Involvement.
That answer, great answer.
Carter's staff. She's the one on barricaded subject staff.
I'm not the one on barricaded subject.
Yeah, well, any one of us could be. And then and then we're doing this departmental scan. This is Redshift is a company that's going through all the city departments. It's an opportunity for us to envision what would the ideal be for us. How do we start working towards that? And this is happening for us at a pretty convenient time because we're also finalizing our 5-year strategic plan. And it might seem interesting that we're doing that while we're hiring new police chiefs, but it's been something we've been working on for a couple of years, and it's informed by the department and our managers, and we've already started working on some of the initiatives. So the ideal is for the department to be cruising along, so when the next chief gets here, they don't need to hurry up and figure out how to turn the engines on and all that. Instead, they can walk around, become acquainted with the community, with the department members, and then ask how they want to start making adjustments. So having this strategic plan moving forward, having this happen, just is, any leader would love to have some reports that said these are the things that are important to the community and the department right now. And let's keep moving here. These are the policy updates that we've done, published. And this is the data-led policing report. This slide has virtually no change from month to month. This is the public initiated calls for service. They're concentrated in the center of town, those 3 neighborhoods. And this is the officer initiated stuff. And these figures are skewed. What we have the downtown officers doing right now during the summer is they check out when they do a check at Broadway and Olive, so that we can make sure that those checks are happening in the park blocks and in Broadway Plaza. So it looks as though there's more officer-initiated activity, but it's officers, it's the downtown team doing what we've asked them to do. But otherwise, it's the same concentration of stuff.
Sorry.
Which button am I? Okay, this is this trend, 36-month trend continues. These are the point. Sorry. Oh, this is always dangerous giving me a pointer. So the officer-initiated calls for service have come down almost at exactly the same rate that the public-initiated calls for service have gone up. And the total officer plus public-initiated calls for service have gone up slightly. It's really a constant for the most part. So this, we're still digging into what's driving the community, the public-initiated calls for service, but I'm pretty confident it has weighs heavily on those related to the chronically homeless. So this is what you see in this slide is that we have 50 officers on duty on any given 24-hour period. And as you can see, there's been a steady increase in the number of calls for service each day that those officers have to handle. It's about 300 calls for service for 50 officers, and 36 months ago it was less than 235. So the workload grows with the number of officers is constant. And then similarly, the officer-initiated calls for service is going down at about the same rate. So there's a finite amount of capacity.
Is that control officers?
Yeah.
Is that just everybody that's here on a daily basis?
The 50 is those people that are out answering calls. So that's patrol, and I think it's probably, I'll have to ask now that you brought it up, it's patrol, TEU, it might be school resource officers also.
It's not like detectives, it's not.
No, those that are answering the radio.
I have a question on that as well. Is there a ratio when you look at our city that you would want for a goal you would pursue for public to initiate calls for service versus officer initiated? Is there a measurement like that?
Yeah, there are. Well, this study that was done in 2007 used a formula. So what some places like to argue is we've got 300,000 people in our community. Just a very simple equation. How many officers per thousand should we have? Boom, now you know how many officers to hire. And there's even places where there's an ordinance that requires that for every incremental growth in the population, there's an increase in public safety services. That's really not the smartest approach. The smarter way is what you're suggesting, and that's to look at a factor in population, geography. I mean, if we were only a mile square, we could do a lot of this with the kinds of the officers we have, but it's 41 square miles. In the number of calls for service we have, the kind of calls we have. So the approach we're going to take to this community justice plan will be, because we're not going to hire 100 officers, $150,000 a copy. We're not going to have 100 officers. But what we ought to be doing is asking ourselves what's consuming all their time, and is there a different way to do that? Which is why the next iteration of this will show what is driving that increase, and then what's a different way to approach that kind of work, so we can get our officers back to doing the traditional work of property crime, violent crime, problem solving.
Do reports like that, and I found a report online today. Get logged in as a public call for services.
Yeah,
in this measurement.
Yes.
So it doesn't, the officer doesn't have to respond. It is captured there.
Yeah, it is all calls for service, even those that are not dispatched. Yes. And there's the total calls for service. So just a different way of looking at the chart that you saw earlier.
Chief, I have a question about the calls for service. It could be a comment also of the other commissioners. I know in Oakland's PD, there was a point at which people were not calling 911 because you could be on hold for 15 or 20 minutes regardless of what emergency you were having going on in your living room, and then just as likely be told there's no one to send. So calls for service went down because there wasn't any point to it. At the same time, the crime is going up, which means the officer-initiated calls are rising at the same time that the calls for service are going down. I just wonder if something sort of the reverse of that may not be happening here, is that you mentioned earlier people have more confidence in the department now than in previous years. Are they calling more because they think something will happen? And that cuts into the time that the officers have not just to be running from call to call, which they would reduce their initiated calls for service because they're too damn busy going to the public calls. So in a sense, you're victims of your own success.
Yeah, I could be. There's all kinds of theories that we won't ever know the answer to. That we have, as you'll see here in a minute, very few calls for service in the parks, even though we know there are a lot of park road violations going on when people are living in the park and using drugs there, drinking. So I think there's sort of an apathetic view of the parks. I'm just driving by, I'm not in the park. We do get a ton of calls in the neighborhood, though, because, around the parks, but I mean in neighborhoods. When people are living on the street, we get a lot of calls about that. And one family living in a van in one neighborhood, there will be many calls over weeks while they're waiting for police or CMS to call or somebody to address that. So I think what's happened is now the offenses, so they're not all felonies, I mean many are minor offenses, are happening outside somebody's kitchen window, and that's very different than if this was happening in somebody else's neighborhood. So that's my theory, that people feel less safe when they're calling us about it, and they're frustrated that we aren't doing more about it. And then our watch commanders visit the neighborhood meetings, and they encourage people to call because it's our way of measuring what we need and what we need to be doing. Yeah. Okay, this is a graph of this is a graph that shows our response times to priority 1 and 2 calls. So the let's see which bar, the queue time, which is the dark blue bar, is the length of time that a call is sitting on the screen before it's been dispatched. So a call taker picks up the phone and that starts, and makes an entry into a call screen. So the first time they type, the queue time is now running. And then it sits on the dispatcher screen. The call taker is taking the call. It sits on the dispatcher screen. And the call taker is waiting for, the dispatcher now is waiting for an officer to be available to send to that call. So that's the queue time. And priority 1 and 2 calls are, the highest risk calls. This is where life and property are in immediate danger. Crime is happening right now. Those are priority 1 and 2 calls. So you can see the queue time has gone up from 5 minutes to 7 minutes. It's gone up 2 minutes in 36 months. The response time, which is the amount of time it takes for an officer to get there, has remained pretty constant. It's gone up only 7/10, almost 1 whole minute. So when an officer is dispatched, they get there at about the same amount of time. Instead of waiting for officers to be available to dispatch, that's taking a little bit longer. Not huge changes, but you can see the trends going in the right direction. Priority 3 calls, these are, a shoplifter or disorderly subjects. But it is something that's happening now. And you can see that queue time has gone from 17 minutes to 29 minutes. Response time is fairly constant. It's grown a little bit. So the capacity problem is affecting the direct services that people are getting.
Just not to take away from your slides, but this is, if anybody gets the opportunity to go sit at the 911 center, this is really enlightening when you watch that group work and realize how many calls come through and how they have to sit there and they're trying to see what an officer, and they're trying to time it to the 100%. They do great work in that office, but it's extraordinary as a commissioner to go sit in there for 3 or 4 hours and watch that process.
What's changed because of this increase in demand for police time is that it used to be that when I was a patrol officer, there would be an east side team and a west side team, and you never crossed Willamette Street. You handle all the calls in your own district. There are 3 beats on each side, and you stayed your beat, and everything worked out just fine. Well, now there are so many calls to go to, they send whatever officers available. So all the officers are working all over town. As much as we'd like to create an east side and west side, it isn't feasible with the demand on our time. And then priority 4 and 5 calls are those that are not emergencies, that probably have suspect information, so we have to respond. They can be, trespassers and campers and that sort of thing, but they could be cold burglaries also. And so the queue time, as you can see, has gone up pretty dramatically. These calls sometimes hold for more than a day. I talked to a couple on my way in here that asked if I could get a little quicker response because they want to report elder abuse. They reported it from their home yesterday, and then 6 hours later, after they'd gone to bed, they got a call from dispatch that says we're available to come out now. That's not going to work. So they thought they might get a little quicker service if they wait in the lobby. It does not change the time it takes for an officer to get here, but coincidentally, someone was just then available to help them, and they've been waiting for an hour and a half out here. Okay, this is what this slide shows is that the time that it takes an officer once they arrive on scene to handle a call has also gone up. And right now, we can only tell you what the theories are about why this is. The calls that officers handle take more time. It takes, in order to deal with a disorderly subject who's in a mental health crisis, you should take more time if you don't want to use force. It's going to take more time to figure that out. That could be one reason. Another reason is that if an officer clears from a call before they complete a report, at the end of the day, they have a whole bunch of incomplete reports. So a smart officer will either ask the dispatcher to take them out of service for a while so they can complete the report, or they won't clear from the call until the report's done. And there could be other factors. But to do the work the way we want our officers to deliver the kind of service we want them to provide takes more time. You've seen this slide quite a few times, and unfortunately the data was, the way the data was captured, this isn't that useful a picture, but right now the reality is the same. Those three neighborhoods have the highest number of calls for service, and they're continuing to grow a little bit. So downtown always has a spike in the spring and summer, and there's more because we have more officers down there, and people who live and work downtown know the officers are down there, so they're calling more. The dispatch calls for service have gone up 21% in the last 36 months, and the officer-initiated and the public-initiated have gone up 25%. West University is seeing a similar increase, 28% increase from the public. Whitaker has seen the most growth, 37%. This could be partly due to our enforcement in the parks, so the people who would have otherwise been in the park are now in the Whitaker neighborhood, and the neighborhood around the Mission and Ninkasi and Tyree Oil have seen a lot of folks come in from out of town. They look like they're largely meth and heroin addicted folks, and they hang out there because they can walk for a meal to the Mission, and they can sleep. So that's created a lot of work for us. But I think that might be part of what's contributing to it. And then the parks, as I said earlier, they got a really low public-initiated calls for service, but we know there's a lot of work to do there. So our we have 2 officers assigned to those parks that are highlighted. And then the loud noise complaints is a pretty constant deal, no real change there. If you start visiting a neighborhood association, the South University Neighborhood Association is pretty active, and it's just crime business is a big part of what they talk about. Then we have these gross crime categories: person, property, and society. They're all going up right now. So that's what those trends look like. And we have an acting captain in charge of special operations, Lieutenant Sean McGann, and he's been using these density maps and to respond to where the calls, where their time is most important. And these are some of the things they've been doing. I think you all got the report. And he's in charge of downtown traffic enforcement, West University for patrol. That's what we've got. Any questions about any of that?
Any questions for the chief? Yeah, a lot of things going on downtown to the staff and different various groups and input. They put those pods out there in different parts, areas you congregate, and are always many issues and these things. Those are being treated fairly, and is it working? Or is it something else going back? Or it looks nice, I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. So we're operating under the advice of the Project for Public Space, which says it can't just be enforcement. You got to put activity in, positive, healthy activity. So we've done that at Broadway Plaza and the park blocks, and And then there's a lot of, been a lot of events downtown too. It looks like the combination of things definitely helped. I mean, you saw that we had our Park Blocks initiative, and Park Blocks were vacant. So the activity is important, and it requires a lot less police presence, I think, as long as that activity is going on. The downtown operations team, which is the division managers that devised this whole plan for downtown for the spring and summer, are also preparing an after-action report, and they're trying to find, objective measures to help us to understand what worked and what didn't, and that will include an analysis of the dog ban downtown. So that'll be a public thing that will be presented to council along with this.
I think it's some city staff meetings downtown in the parks. It's kind of neat to see that.
Yeah.
The community gets involved a little bit. The department managers, but I thought that it's just exciting to see that kind of activity. Well,
you want to wrap up I really want to see a meeting. Okay, 25 minutes to do Commissioner comments. So we'll move on to our closing comments, and so I'm going to ask you to start.
I know this is public, so I'll be as easy as I can. I do not believe that Bob's upcoming absence is going to free us from certain commentators who have shown to me throughout the various different capacities that I've been forced to deal with said commentators. So I see the opportunity to do this ad hoc committee as a way to kind of clarify where we are, what we do in the community. I was very angry this evening, and and I understand that that's going to be something that's going to come up, especially when you're a person in public service. But it was uncalled for, and I do not feel as though what we do here is actually appreciated or understood in the community, or from family members that I speak to, that I tell them I'm a commissioner. They think I've made this tremendous leap into financial place. So that's what I'm going to say.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, what can I say? It's been a great run. I have really enjoyed the work, and this is what I call a mutually beneficial assignment here, because I've not only, been able to do something that I feel useful at. Obviously, it wouldn't be good working on an insurance commission or a medical commission or something that I know nothing about. So, having been involved in law enforcement for over 40 years, I think I understand some things, and I'm hopeful that some of the things I did to contribute help. But I also learned a lot of things, and I learned how to look at things from different viewpoints. And somebody mentioned that earlier tonight about seeing it from another person's point of view, and really seeing it from that person's point of view and understanding. As far as what Silver was talking about, a person has 3 minutes once a month to say what they want, and that's okay. They get to say what they want, as long as they aren't, disparaging someone so badly that it becomes a harassment or something of that nature. I think it's okay. That's what we're about in this country. People have the right to speak. Unfortunately, certain people end up being violent and antagonistic and causing hate speech that will precipitate fighting. So it's a tough world. And my experience here has shown me that we are able to listen. We have done things based on the input. The TASER policy is one big example, and after that, the issues of camping and homeless, and those decisions were made based on the hearings from people. The council made certain decisions about what they were going to do. So I think our input is useful. And certainly, I know, speaking with the chief privately, it's been useful to him. He likes to hear from people. He makes notes and talks about it, goes back and thinks about it. So, he's leaving now, and like me, but we had a stake in it, and I think I'd like to also say how much I appreciate his leadership over the years. I've seen a lot of chiefs and a lot of things that didn't work, but this is not a community where that's the case. This has worked very well, and I think the public is satisfied with the job he's been doing. It would be maybe to leave. When the bumps along the way are going to happen no matter what job you're in. You're going to have people that mess up and do things wrong. It's just part of life. But I'd like to thank everybody here, the people that were on the commission when I was chair, and the people that helped me through it, especially Carter, who I couldn't have made it through without, because she kept me on the straight and narrow when I was chairing. So when I tried to go off on a tangent, she would get me back on track. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate the input from everybody who's come to the commission and talked to us about issues. It feels good to know that we did do something for the community. And I thank you all. I'm definitely going to miss everything here, but the way things worked out, family, everybody's getting older, and we feel like in the twilight we need to be closer to her family, and my family is both in that area, so we need to kind of get back together again. It's been a great adventure. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Edward. Thank you. Not just for being a good chair for this commission. You certainly made me feel welcome when I was a newbie here. We appreciate that. Enjoyed our talks off duty. Before you went last one on the ride home today. Didn't realize I was going to be your accident. Someone said you've been a good role model for me, transitioning from the head of the table back down to the foot of the table. I've seen people lead groups who are not well able to go back to being a foot soldier. So thank you for setting a great example. We'll be missed.
Well, I just hope you thoroughly enjoy your new house. Yes.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed your presence here. I feel like I've learned from you about how to be a commission member. And I'm going to miss you. It was kind of below for me to hear that you weren't going to be. I'd like to say that I have really enjoyed the public input when we get people to come and speak. I try to find at least something in what each of them says that I can hold as valuable, and even some of the strenuous commentators. It seems often there's a gem in there if you can shift it. I wish there was some way we could do more to encourage public input. I don't quite know what that would be. But I know a lot of people don't know what we are, or what we do, or that they can come in that capacity to speak to us. But it would be really good, I think, if we could do more to make ourselves known in that way.
I appreciate everybody's service in the police commission. I really value the conversation that I hear here, because it informs a lot of the decisions that I make, particularly around policy and practice. I almost always hear something that I realize I can take back and do something about. And it's been an absolute pleasure knowing you, Bob, and having you on the commission and seeing you in the building. It's what I do in the mornings. I do it less now because I have less time, but I have this route that I take. I walk in the front door and I go through one big space, and often Bob is sitting in the mountain crunching it so he could have a chat with somebody my own age, you know. And anyway, having you around has been great, and you're really a good example of you know, a lifetime of public service. One that we should all endeavor to follow.
Here. Yeah, thank you for volunteering, and you probably volunteer 10 different ways. I know you do the cleanup, you're the one that tells us what's going on in the parks, sitting around and watching and observing things, and then the work you're doing inside the building, you're volunteering your time there. I've learned a lot from you, really appreciate it. I think that you came to a place that's going to be a void there, and we'll remember you for a long time, so thank you for that.
Well, I want to thank everybody for the work tonight. I'm actually very excited about having an outreach subcommittee and started that. I think that is something that will pay us huge dividends as we move forward. And I appreciate everybody's willingness to work on that. I want to thank Bob for his service. You know, Bob stood up for people and had us put together rules of respectful and fair communications at a public meeting, which I really appreciate, and for the last 2 years has paid the price for doing that, with being called out and doing that. And it just, I appreciate that, his willingness to stand up and do that. And I know probably in the many years as a police officer, he took some of that same sort of verbal abuse, and that also sort of reminds all of us that there are a lot of people that stand up every day for people and stand up out there and aren't treated that way. And we have to remember that it's hard to keep it cool when you know that. And he's attacked us all, but we appreciate it all. Thank you. With that, there are cupcakes, and you can have a second one if you were early on in the evening. But thank you. Thanks everyone for the meeting.